Over the years, anytime mentions repaving a racetrack, it seems to send shudder of horrors through the competitors and the fans alike that you have condemned the racetrack to some purgatory for at least 5 years. Brad Gillie, I don't know that holds true anymore. North Wilkesboro was repaved this year, Sonoma, and a partial repave at Iowa. Where are we in the saga of repaving racetracks?
You know, there are so many more factors that go into it, but looking at Iowa Speedway, I can understand some trepidation of, wait, what did they do here? And it turned out to be awesome. You know, North Wilkesboro Speedway, we talked about that. We talked about Sonoma Raceway. I think what happens is anytime you make a change, there is, and I'll just use a kind word, again, I'll say trepidation from the garage of why it's not going to be good. And I think this is more proof that you can't always listen to the garage, because those three repaves, I think we had really great fastic shows. People left Sonoma Raceway saying this was the best Sonoma race that we have ever seen. Now, if we repaved an intermediate track, we could easily fall into that being a one-groove racetrack. I think some of it as well is the style of racetrack. I think Sonoma threw the teams for a curve that, you know, they didn't necessarily know how to get a handle on it. I think Iowa had enough of a curve that we saw teams failing the right front tires on it, and that made things interesting. So I'm not necessarily, as a fan, scared of a repave. I think everyone is a little bit different, but I don't think we should automatically say, oh, well, we're in for a snoozer. That's the kind of language I don't like to hear.
Kyle, so many times, and I especially heard this before they finally gave in and repaved Atlanta. They talked about repaving it for 5 years. They didn't just repave it. They changed the complexion of the track. And the drivers will go, we love it. We're out there slip sliding around, and the racing is not compelling.
Yeah, and listen, Brad, I'm gonna steal what you just said. Is no truer statement has ever been uttered. Can't listen to the garage. You cannot listen to those guys. Okay, they're their own worst enemies, and they don't even know it. We all, after the tire test at Iowa, we heard how bad it was going to be, how bad the racing was going to be, how bad everything was, and these guys go there and test, and they still don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. Them testing at Iowa is like me taking a math test. I'm going to get it about half right. Okay, that's about it. I'm going to get it about half wrong. That's just the way it is. But the point is, you have to repave these tracks at some point in time. You can't continue. They paved Daytona in '58. They paved it again in '79, and they paved it a few years ago, whatever. Every 20 or 25 years, we're going to have to come in and pave these places. Listen, you beg for your street to be paved. These racetracks have to be paved to continue to move forward and to put on the shows, whether it's progressive banking, whatever it may be. So I'm a firm believer. Listen, Sonoma was one step away from being a dirt road course. It had to be paved. They're not needed to be paved. It had to be paved.
Yeah, I think when you look at the trepidation, as Brad mentioned, from the garage area, it all stems from nobody likes change. Nobody, ever. And these drivers, they work on their craft, and they go to racetracks, and they start to figure them out, and they decide, okay, well, I'm good here. I like this racetrack. I know what I'm doing. And then you say, oh, no, we're going to change that, and you're going to have to figure it out all over again. And that change is what compels them to speak out. I don't know if we're going to like this. I'm not sure. It's no different than, you change the turf type on a football field, and the football players are like, I don't know if I'm going to like that or not. It's change. Nobody loves change. You have to figure some things out. You have to do some more planning and preparation and things that you're not used. I mean, look at Martin Truex Jr. at Sonoma. He was one of the biggest people to be outspoken about, I don't know if I like this. It's because he was really good at Sonoma. He had figured it out, and now it's different. And he had to go back and relearn what he had already gotten a grasp on. Look, he was running second where he ran out of gas. So he figured it out clearly. But I think it's the human element of it's changing, and we don't want it to change.
Well said. You're right. People, I think, naturally do have a fear of change and the unknown. But I will also say this. We've such advances in technology. 20 years ago, you repaved a racetrack. It was the same pavement all the way up and down the racetrack. It was the same stuff that they were using to pave somebody's driveway with, and they just took it over and paved a racetrack. And, Brad, I know you talked about this in the past, and I was kind of facetious about this earlier. Even at North Wilkesboro, the pavement that they use different than the pavement on the inside. So the technology of paving science has made great strides forward.
Yeah, you know what? And that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. You go back to Kentucky Speedway. Remember when they repaved that? And they essentially didn't put the finish layer of asphalt on there because they wanted it to have kind of more aggregate, be a little more sandpaper-like. And we saw great racing there when they did that. And that's what they did with North Wilkesboro Speedway. You had the bottom two grooves that were paved like you would normally see them paved, or I should say the bottom two stripes of asphalt, because there are 3 stripes of asphalt on that track, obviously more than 2 grooves. Outside one is a little more aggressive when it comes to the aggregate, when it comes to the surface and all of that. And to hear Steve Swift from Speedway Motorsports talk about it, he does a much better job of describing it because he's the man in charge of it and truly understands it. There was a plan that went into that. And when you just heard drivers saying, oh, all they did was just shave off the cap layer of asphalt and then they put down some new stuff, that's not how you repave a track. Look, we're not going to tell you how to drive. I don't think you should tell the experts how to pave racetracks either, because they got that one amazing.
Doug, you're right. Brad does like to talk about
He
asphalt.
loves it. I'm glad we got an aggregate in there. That was what I was really fishing for, Brad.
This is the part that we all would, though, is Alexis, you're exactly right. Nobody likes it. It's just human nature. The problem is we hand these guys a mic and ask them about change.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's back to Brad's part is they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to paving a racetrack. They don't know what goes into the aggregate. We just don't. Our job is to hang on to a steering wheel and drive till it slides. And that's the way it is. And that's what they know. And you've changed that moment, that slip angle, if we can. You've changed that for them.
And a lot of these guys articulated that we didn't know where the push point was at Iowa. We didn't know how far we could go before the car let go.
Yeah.
And when there's as much on the line as there is, for these cup teams week in, week out, partners that they have to satisfy and all of these things, you don't want to wreck your car and have to pull out the backup. And there's a lot of pressure there. And so I think, between the pressure and then, just the unknown of everything, it creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates, a lot of other emotions.